Recently I released several short form videos about how I am reading through my debut trilogy in an effort to get acclimated with the world again so I can indie publish it in 2021. I know not everyone follows me everywhere, but I did put these videos on my Instagram for IGTV, but I also wanted to share them here because this is something that you may be interested in terms of my process and how I am going through with self-publishing. I also created chapters down below so you'll be able to see in the progress bar that they are all sort of segmented out if you're interested in skipping around to a topic that's of most interest to you. Obviously, I would love for you to watch all of them, but I wanted to make it a little more convenient for you. And be sure to hit that like button if you're interested in seeing my progress through these books, which I have not read in about 7 years. And also be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell next to it. I do post videos every Monday talking about the writing process and all the bookish things, and I'd love for you to come along on this journey with me. Today I'm going to talk to you about rights reversion for novels, and also I am rereading my debut trilogy for republication. So what does this all mean? I wanted to start a series talking about my process of republishing a book that I had the rights reversed on or reverted on. So rights reversion is usually a clause in a traditional book contract, and they can vary all over the place, all over the board. So with this specific series, this was my debut trilogy. It's a young adult paranormal trilogy. I had a certain amount of time and a monetary amount that the book should have been making, and if those were not met, that monetary amount, I had the right to get my rights reversed. Basically, that means for me that I did ask for it and it was granted. So I am republishing this series as an indie. So I am going through the process of rereading the books currently. I never reread my books after they are published. I never have been able to. I usually cringe in certain ways because I just think of things I could have done better, but I know when I do publish a book, it is the best product that I can publish at the time. So this is a very interesting process for me. I started reading the first book yesterday, Soul Taken. I am going to leave all of the titles because I really like them. So going through this process, I wanted to talk every day, every other day, and sort of hone in on a topic. Today is more of an introduction, but the topic of rereading your work. I am curious if you are a writer who has been published. Do you reread your work? Do you give it a certain amount of time? I have found that I still enjoy the story so much. I absolutely love this story. I have such a fondness for young adult books, coming of age books. This is a paranormal, but it really does have a big coming of age element. And I'm having fun in this process, and I'm learning a lot about things that I can be doing, things that I can look out for in future books, certain mindsets. So as we go through this process, I look forward to sort of exploring what I learned. And also I am going to be creating an editing plan for these books because I definitely want to edit them. There are just certain things that I don't want to be out there anymore, certain ideas that I had 7 years ago, 8 years ago, when I submitted this book that I would like to change. So I'm excited to go through this process. I feel like I've already said that 7 times. So I am looking forward to chatting with you again tomorrow. Today I'm going to talk to you about how I take notes during a read-through before I start my editing process. So the read-through was definitely interesting since I did publish this book about 7 years ago, and during this process I did read it on an e-reader. I do have physical copies of these books that I made for myself, and I did want to take notes during this process so I didn't forget anything that I wanted to change in my upcoming editing process. So how I did this on on an e-reader is that I wanted to make note of characters. So I would highlight them in one color. I wanted to make note of any settings that I was using. So I highlighted that in another color. And I wanted to note, this is a young adult paranormal book. So anything that had to do with the paranormal world, any specific things that were happening in this world that was different than our world, I wanted to note that. And also any proofreading issues or any issues that I wanted to change, I highlighted in another color. So there was 4 different colors that I was highlighting throughout the process. Normally when I am editing a book, I will make notes, but I tried not to make a ton of notes during this. I wanted to read it as a reader and find these little plot holes that I want to fix during the editing process. So when I do make notes, they're usually very quick. That's why I like doing that on an e-reader, because it's a little uncomfortable to write notes than if I had a piece of paper and pen nearby. And I found this process of note-taking was much easier to do on my phone or on my Kindle, because I could take it wherever I needed to. If I was waiting and I had 10 minutes to quickly read a chapter or 2, then I just found the process very easy. So that is sort of my note-taking process on my read-through. If you have any questions or want to tell me how you take notes during read-throughs for your novels, I would love to hear it in the comments below. Today I'm talking about setting up a series Bible digitally in Notion. Lately I've been doing a lot of digital planning. I don't really use a lot of notebooks, and I'm loving the whole digital process. So I recently found Notion, which is sort of a second brain for me. I've been finding it very helpful for basically dumping all of the information in my brain, and I have been doing a little bit of research on how to use Notion and use it for my author business as well. And I had set up a series Bible. So a series Bible is basically a comprehensive place that you put all of the information for your books. Now this could be for any number of situations, whether you write like novellas, you write even standalones. This is just a place to have all of the information to make sure that your book has continuity in it, and you're not saying that in one chapter a character has blue eyes and this other chapter they have brown eyes, things like that. So I really appreciate the process. I've never had a series Bible before. I sort of just use everything in Scrivener when I do write in a series, but I wanted to have a really robust one moving forward for this series because I want to make sure I do everything right the first time if possible. So the little sections that I used for my series Bible were characters, and in the note-taking process while I did my read-through, I highlighted all of my characters in a particular color and any of their physical descriptions or any of their familial relationships or family trees or relationships, if they were partners or if they were friends or enemies. I made sure to list that in the series Bible. Also, another section was for settings. Any settings that were used and described in the book, I made sure to put them in its own section. And also the paranormal elements. This is a young adult paranormal series, and I wanted to list all of the things that were different from a contemporary world versus the world that I created. I found that this has been the most important thing during my read-through because it's been so many years since I published this book, and I don't tend to read my books after they're published, so it was important for me to remember all of these little details and make sure they still, made sense. They made sense to me as a reader as well while I was reading it. And also moving forward, as I do edit, I want to make sure that I'm consistent throughout each book and also throughout the series. So let me know if you have ever made a series Bible or if you are interested in making one. I'd love to continue this conversation below in the comments. Today I'm going to have a discussion about book series with you and how important it is to set up the first book of your series. As I'm reading through the first book in the series, I have been finding little bits and pieces of the story that I still actually remember and how they link with the other books in the series. So in terms of setting up a series is very similar to how you would set up a book, where you want to have that sort of beginning, middle, and end for the main character, or main characters if you have multiple points of view. So I am paying very close attention to things happening in this book and how they will progress throughout the series, and also in terms of setting up the tone, and especially because this is a paranormal novel, which you could look at a fantasy or a sci-fi novel very similarly, in that it's not a contemporary novel, so you really want to set up this world right away for your reader. And when it comes to doing that as well, I really enjoy in series that I do read and within my own books having a microscopic look from the first book and then sort of expanding as you go into the rest of the series. So I just find it very important to take a lot of care in how you're setting up your first book so that the later books in the series will only help your reader love it that much more, and you can expand on your world and also your characters. So I would love to know that if you do write series, how do you find setting up the first book in your series? And if you have any questions about more about this topic, I'd love to talk to you in the comments below. Today I'm talking about my editing plans for the first book in the series of books that I am republishing indie style. I just finished the first book in the series, Soul Taken, and I have so many thoughts. And I still absolutely love the book. And as I'm going through my day, I think about things that I can tweak and things that will better set up the series as a whole. So this was my first book that I ever published, and I was just thinking about different ways that I can use my knowledge of editing and writing since then to push the books further into making them the best they can be. I just had an idea about revisiting my old revision letters from my editor at the time. And because I was a newbie author, this was the first book I ever published, and this was the first book that I ever worked with an editor with. And I know I made probably some mistakes in how to do this, but ultimately in the publishing process, at least, well, I guess in self-publishing and traditional publishing, the editor gives you suggestions, and it is up to you, the author, to figure out which suggestions you want to use and implement within the book. So I did go back to my old emails and I pulled out the revision letters for all 3 books in the series, and I am planning on using them moving forward. I have a process on how I break down an editorial letter, and I plan on doing this again because even in my quick look about my old revision letters, I do see some things that will enhance the book that maybe I didn't quite put through on the page, and that'll just make my book even better than before. Like I said, I have 7 more years of experience than I did then, and I'm looking forward to using those notes and my own brainstorming process and how I can make this book better. So let me know below in the comments how you go forth with editing your books, and I look forward to talking to you a little more once I start the second book in the series, Soul Possessed. Today I'm talking to you about author mistakes, author newbie mistakes, and a few that I have made in my own series. So I finished Soul Taken, which was the first book, and I moved on to Soul Possessed, which is the second book. And I find it kind of funny how I have changed so much throughout the years. And Soul Possessed was the first book that I had to write on a deadline for a publisher. So I had written Soul Taken. It took many years to write. I published that with my publisher at the time. The contract was for 3 books, so I had to write this book under a deadline, and I had a lot of people waiting for me. So I do remember at the time it was a lot of pressure, and I had no idea really what I was doing other than I knew I needed a first draft at this point and another draft at another point, and I had to edit it at some other point. So I had all of these deadlines. So as I'm reading through it, at least in the beginning part of the book, I found that one of the biggest mistakes I made was the amount of rehashing of the first book that I did in the beginning of the second book. I definitely think that is a mistake that may have slowed the pace a little bit, and I have already begun to think about ways that I can change that and make the beginning much more exciting, and also some things that I started in the second book that I do want to bring back to the first book. So I think this is very exciting for me. Even though it's a big mistake, it feels like a mistake now, but I did the best that I could at the time. So I would love to know if you have read your previous works or works that you've done prior that you feel like later on that you see them as mistakes. I would love to have that discussion in the comments below. I think it is a very common thing for writers to do, especially because with each project that we do, we grow and we learn new things. And I think it's important to look back sometimes and just see where we came from. So let's continue the conversation in the comments. Today I'd like to talk to you about opportunity within publishing. So I wanted to talk today about a little bit of self-doubt that I've had lately with these books and sort of what I'm doing moving forward. And the self-doubt for me is just something that authors go through, at least I do. A lot of authors I talk to have sort of imposter syndrome and things like that, where I think to myself, what's the point? Why would I indie publish these books? You know, I published them so far back and I should just leave them there and not have to worry about them. But as I'm thinking about these books, I really, really love the first book. The first book is the first book I've ever written, finished, and published, and it just has a special place in my heart, and the story is still really good. I still enjoy it so much. When it comes to books 2 and 3, I'm having a lot of self-doubt when it comes to them because they are not in the caliber that I am now and where I wanted to be with them then, but I also know that those were the books, the best books that I could write at the time. I had to take a step back a little bit and think about this opportunity and whether or not I wanted to take it. I could easily have these books in my computer for the rest of my life and no one will ever see them again. But I also have reasons for wanting to indie publish. As I said, I love these books so much. I love the series. I love the world. Yes, they may need some work, but I have my why. And the why is very specific to me, and I want to indie publish because I want to try the process, and I think this is a process that I want to incorporate in my life moving forward with certain books, and I want to make a certain amount of income with these books, and I know I can do that through indie publishing. I know if I put the work in that I will find success in this way, and I think the self-doubt is really not that big of a deal when I look at my why. That being said, I would love to know from you if you ever had the opportunity to do something like this. Say you had a work published and maybe years later you had the opportunity to republish it. Is this something that you would continue to work on, or is this something that you would just leave on the back burner? I'd love to have this conversation because I think there are both sides to it. I think some books maybe need a little different opportunity like these, and some books or some projects maybe just need to be a stepping stone toward your ultimate goal. Today I'm going to talk to you about managing expectations versus reality when it comes to publishing. I read through all of the books and I sort of came to a stopping point because half of book 2 and almost the entirety of book 3 needs to be rewritten, but I am deciding to move forward. But I did want to dig a little deeper in terms of what I discovered while reading these books. So of course things need to be edited because I published in 2013, and the second book in the series hit that sophomore slump, as they call it. It was the first book I wrote on a deadline for a publisher, and I had to write it very quickly because it was a digital first title, which means it came out digitally first before any other formats, and the process just moved a lot quicker than I could imagine. At the time, it was the best book I could write, and I still love the premise of it. I feel like it still has a lot of that tone from the first book and a lot of the mystery surrounding our characters. But when it came to book 3, it's basically a different book entirely. So I did speak about series and how they should have sort of a beginning, middle, and end like you would in just a standalone story. And these books are basically 3 different novels with the same characters. There's really not much that carries through. That was part of the reason that the books, didn't do that well. And I'm going to be honest here because why not? So because I do have this opportunity to make them better. I'm not looking back, and I'm looking forward on what I can do with them, and I have full control over them now, which is fantastic. I just wanted to talk about expectations. So my expectations with these books is that I would get them back and then do a little bit of tweaking and then put them out again, and it would be very simple, but it's not going to be simple, and I know that moving forward. So I would like to know when you are faced with these certain situations where your expectations are not met and the reality that you face. For me, I'm facing it head on. I'm going to read out these books and get them up there as the best that I have in me right now. I could have easily just quit and put them in the drawer forever, which I'm not going to do. And let me know how you would handle it, if you would handle this situation, or if you have encountered this before. I'd love to know. So moving forward, I am publishing them in spring of 2021, which seems so far away, but with the amount of work I have to do, it seems very close. So I'm going to be doing some more updates here, and I look forward to diving into this process of self-publishing and editing these books, and I hope to have you follow along with me. I hope you enjoyed watching these videos, and I'd love to continue the conversation about the things I talked about in the comments below. I did list some questions, and I'd love to hear your answers about them and how you would approach this from your point of view. Again, please give this video a like because it really helps me out, and be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you know the next time I upload, and we'll see you soon.